The vote just happened. Can you take me inside those moments for you when you lost your leadership position?
Well, you know, it was not a surprise. I think you saw last night on the floor of the House, I laid out what the issues are, what's at stake. This is really about something that's much, much bigger than, you know, the Republican conference in the House. But I think it's a really important and grave moment. It's a moment where we have to decide as a party, you know, whether we're going to embrace the truth. And, you know, in my view, we must do that. We must embrace the Constitution. We must embrace the truth. We have big battles that we have to fight on policy in terms of the policies that we're seeing from the Biden administration and from the Democrats here on the Hill. But if we're going to be effective at fighting those battles and bringing back voters we lost in 2020, we have to embrace the truth. We cannot perpetuate this really dangerous lie that the former president is telling people.
And I want to have a real conversation about that. But if for a moment, can we zero in on that time in the conference room? You're looking at your Republican colleagues in the eye. How did it feel? What was that like?
You know, I was very honest, and I told them I have real affection and admiration for most of them, and I love this institution, and we all have been put here in this moment by history, and history is going to judge us. And you know, I made clear that if what they're looking for are leaders who are willing to perpetuate the lie, which I think unravels our democracy, then I'm not their person. And you know, I think it was not unlike a lot of other conference meetings we've had. Actually, I think I owe them honesty. I think we all owe our constituents honesty, and that's how this happened.
3.5 months ago, there was a vote of confidence. Well, I would say 3.5 months ago, there was a vote on you, which you overwhelmingly won. 145 votes to 61. Today, it was just a voice vote. It wasn't even close. What happened? What changed?
You know, it's a really, I think it's a scary thing because we have watched so quickly. In the aftermath of January 6th, I think you could have asked just about anybody, maybe not 100% of the people up here, but close, what happened, who was responsible, what we needed to do as a country moving forward. And for reasons that I don't understand, leaders in my party have decided to embrace the former president who launched that attack. And I think you've watched over the course of the last several months the former president get more aggressive, more vocal, pushing the lie. And I think that's a really important thing for people to understand. This isn't about looking backwards. This is about the real-time, current potential damage that he's doing, that he continues to do, both in terms of using language that he knows incited violence on January 6th, and also in terms of really fundamentally questioning whether or not our electoral process can do the will of the people. No president has ever done that before, and we have to stand up against that.
You've made statements since January 6th. You fist bumped President Biden at the joint address to Congress. Do you think there was a last straw where you lost the support of your Republican colleagues?
Well, several things. I think it's very important for all of us, Republicans and Democrats, to get back to the days where we engage on substance and where we don't treat our political adversaries as enemies. I think that the nation demands that, and the nation deserves that. And so, you know, whether it's greeting a president of the opposite party, whether it's finding ways to work together, the country is much better served when we do that. And look, I have huge disagreements with Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. I think that Joe Biden's policies are really dangerous in a whole lot of ways. But I think my responsibility is to lay out why based on substance and to have those substantive debates and not just, you know, encourage the kind of vitriol that doesn't serve anybody. So I think that's very important. I also think that there is real concern among a number of members of my own party about a January 6th commission. And I think, you know, I've been very public that commission needs to be bipartisan. It needs to look only at January 6th and the events leading up to it, not at the BLM and Antifa riots last summer. Those were horrific, and people should be held accountable. But we should not dilute the investigation we have to have into January 6th. And the commission should have subpoena power. I think it should be retired officials so that nobody feels political pressure. And I think that kind of intense, narrow focus threatens people in my party who may have been playing a role they should not have been playing.
I mean, can you say it even more bluntly? Do you think there were members of Congress who were complicit in the attack and that a commission could uncover that?
You know, I don't want to go that far, but I think that the fact that there's such resistance from Republicans to a commission that really focuses, as the 9/11 Commission did, as the Warren Commission did after the Kennedy assassination, as the Commission did after the Pearl Harbor attacks, each time we have something happen in this country that is that kind of a crisis, we have a commission. And there is no reason why there should be any resistance to doing so in this case.
You just had your leadership position taken from you. Trump's political operation is looking to run you out of town and run you out of Congress. Why is the fight worth it to you?
Because the country's worth it. You know, if you go to the soldiers' home here in Washington, where Abraham Lincoln spent a lot of his time, actually. It's just sort of enough away from the White House that it was a little breezier in the summer times. They have a quote of his that's inscribed over one of the fireplaces, and it says, "This nation is worth fighting for to preserve such an inestimable jewel." And I really believe we have to love our country more than politics or partisanship or anything else. And it also is incumbent upon those of us who are elected and who have taken that oath to do everything we can to defend this democracy.
What is your ouster about? It's not about policy or whether you're conservative. What does this show? What does it show about the Republican Party?
Look, I think that the former president continues to engage in activities and language that are really dangerous. And I think that there are Republicans across the country who've been misled. And I think that for us as elected officials, our responsibility is to tell the truth. Our responsibility is to help people see the election was not stolen, to help people see that the big lie that the former president is telling is a lie and it's destructive. But there are millions of people who were misled by him, who were betrayed by him.
Does this vote show that if you don't believe the lie, you're out?
Look, I think that the leaders of my party have decided to embrace the lie, have decided to ignore it, and I think that's really dangerous. So my view is we have an obligation to speak against it, and I'm certainly going to continue to do that.
You've put this in very stark terms. You've said that the stakes are democracy itself. You've said you're fearing that democracy itself could unravel. Can you explain that? Some people might say, oh, they're at it again in Washington, some inter-party squabble. Why do you think it's bigger than that?
You know, I think a lot of it comes down to the rule of law and to recognizing and understanding that you know, fundamentally this nation has to have reverence for the rule of law, and that the peaceful transfer of power is at the heart of who we are. The fact that you know, every year, with the exception of one during the Civil War, we have had a peaceful transition of power. I remember sitting on the inaugural stand when President Bush was sworn in for the first time in 2001. And we had been through, obviously, this very intense period of time and 37 days after the election. And I remember sitting there watching Al Gore thinking, what an amazing thing it is. What an amazing thing it is that we were in this intense fight. I'm sure he didn't believe that he lost, but he conceded. And that is at the heart. We have to have presidents who love our country more. We have to have presidents who are committed to the peaceful transfer of power. So what former President Trump is doing is undermining fundamentally people's belief in our electoral process. You know, we have a process, and the process worked. The Electoral College voted. 60 courts, including multiple judges appointed by President Trump, rejected his claims. That's how our process works. And it really is the case that if you refuse to abide by the rulings of our courts, you are at war with the Constitution. That matters, and it has to matter. And that's the damage that he continues to do.
What does it say about former President Trump that he will not accept this loss?
That he's unfit, that he never again can be anywhere close to the Oval Office. And it is incumbent upon the rest of us to stand up and say that.
How far are you willing to take this? Would you run for president?
I think that it is the most important issue that we are facing right now as a country. And we're facing a huge array of issues. We have to make sure we can defend ourselves against China and against Russia, North Korea and Iran. We have to fight back what is really a socialist set of policies from the Democrats. But above everything is our adherence to the Constitution. And anyone who has provoked an attack on the Capitol of the United States, no president obviously ever did that before. He did, and he did it in an effort to steal an election. And he continues to try to convince people the election was stolen. So he must not ever again be anywhere close to the Oval Office.
But my question was, would you run for president to stop that?
I'm going to do everything that I can, both to make sure that that never happens, but also to make sure that the Republican Party gets back to substance and policy. And these things are connected. We have to embrace the Constitution. We have to reject the lie, because we have to be a party of substance. And we have to be able to say to those voters who left us, you should trust us. We're competent conservatives, and you should come back to us.
Before I drop it, will you rule out a run for president?
Right now, I am very focused on making sure that our party becomes again a party that stands for truth and stands for fundamental principles that are conservative, and mostly stands for the Constitution. And I won't let a former president or anybody else unravel the democracy.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Let's talk about your opponents. They, in a nutshell, say you have been relitigating the past. That is a quote from Kevin McCarthy, who is the Republican leader, that you have been talking about Trump, and for that reason, you are distracting from their efforts to take back the House in 2022. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that's wrong. I think that, what's happening, in fact, is that you've got leaders in our party who are letting the former president drag all of us backwards and make all of them complicit in the lie. And I think it's very important for us going forward to reject that, both because it is not a foundation. You can't rebuild our party on a foundation of lies, and also because it's a continuing threat.
Some of your colleagues say, though, we supported you before, Congresswoman Cheney. You made your point. Now drop it. Let's focus on the future.
Well, it's an ongoing threat. So silence is not an option.
Kevin McCarthy was caught on a hot mic saying, I'm done with her. I'm done with her. Did that feel personal to you? And what do you think of his leadership since January 6th?
Look, I think that Leader McCarthy has, changed his position publicly multiple times when we as a conference and we as a country need clear, solid, firm, courageous leadership. And I think the issues that we're facing and the issues we're confronting, they are difficult, but the path that we need to be headed down is clear. And he has not provided that leadership.
He stood with you, and now he doesn't. Are you disappointed?
Look, he hasn't provided the leadership that we need. And as I've said, if the price of having his support is being complicit in the lie, that's obviously not a price I'm willing to pay.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who's expected to replace you, voted with President Trump 78% compared to you. You voted with him 93%. So your expected replacement is less conservative than you. What does that tell you about what's really going on here?
Well, I think it's clearly not about substance and not about policy. I think that, what The criteria seems to be, as I've said, is a willingness to perpetuate the idea that the election was stolen, and I won't participate in that.
And that really raises the question. To be a leader in the Republican Party right now, do you have to buy the lie?
I think it's important for those of us who refuse to do that to be willing to stand up, to be willing to say, look, this country, I'm a conservative Republican. I obviously believe that the Republican Party policies are much better for the country. But I also know that we cannot convince people that they should put their trust in us if we are building our party on a foundation of lies. And so I'm going to focus very much on rebuilding the party, on substance, on policy. Look, if you look at Ronald Reagan, he won 49 states in his reelection. That's the kind of coalition that we need to be building. But if both from a political standpoint, and look, the former president, while he was in office, lost the House, the Senate, and the White House. So if you're looking at this from a constitutional perspective, it's dangerous and wrong. If you look at it from a political perspective, it makes no sense. We've got to be much better than that.
If that's the case, why are Republicans sticking with him? What is the hold that President Trump has on the party?
Well, it's very dangerous. And I think it just requires us to stand up and speak against it.
But how do you explain it?
Well, look, I think that what we have happening now in the United States is something we haven't seen before. I think it's a cult of personality. And I think people were betrayed and misled by him. People really believed, and they shouldn't have, but they did. And he has been peddling lies now in a way that has taken advantage of really good, hardworking Americans all across this country who supported him, who voted for him, who supported his policies. It's a real betrayal now that he's willing to try to unravel the democracy to get back into power.
You said cult of personality. Another colleague said, it was the Republican governor of Maryland said it bothers him that you have to pledge fealty to dear leader or you won't be in the party leadership. Is it a cult-like dynamic that's going on?
Look, I think that what we need are leaders who are willing to stand up and say, the Republican Party is a party of principle. The party is a party of substance. We believe in a strong national defense. We believe in low taxes and limited government. We believe fundamentally in adherence to the Constitution. That's what we've got to build our party around and rebuild our party around. And we all take an oath to the Constitution. We don't take an oath to any individual, and I think we all need to remember that.
But here's the thing. 70% of the Republican Party right now believes President Trump's lies about the election. So if you're out of lockstep with the party, why should you be in leadership?
Look, leadership is about leading, and it's about telling the truth. And it's about making sure that people understand how important these fundamental principles are. And I think that that is incumbent upon anybody who's elected, upon anybody who's in leadership, is to tell the truth.
In Wyoming, some of your voters said it was a betrayal, what you've done. They said, she basically stabbed us in the back with what she felt was the right thing to do. Well, I didn't vote for her feelings. I voted for her to represent us. And another said, you're not supposed to vote your conscience to represent Wyoming. You're supposed to represent Wyoming. So those voters in your home state are saying, we believe Trump, not Liz Cheney.
Look, I believe and will continue to say and talk to voters at home every single day about my oath and my duty. And the people of Wyoming, their adherence to and belief in the Constitution should not be questioned or challenged by anybody. And my oath, which I swore under God, as did every other member of Congress, requires a fidelity to the Constitution. And it's not an oath that you can set aside because of political reasons or partisanship. It's an oath that stands no matter what. And that is what I will campaign on. That is why I was elected. And I look forward to continuing to talk with voters all across Wyoming about the stakes. And
will you run for re-election?
Absolutely.
Do you think you can win?
Absolutely.
Trump got more votes in Wyoming last time around than you did. Just a few, but He did have a higher percentage.
Well, and in the intervening months, he has provoked an angry mob to attack the Capitol to try to steal an election, and he has continued to make claims that are fundamentally dangerous to the democracy. And I will have that debate and discussion every day of the week if people want to have that debate and discussion. I think the right is very clear here.
The Trump political team is actively looking to coalesce around a primary challenger to you. They say it is the highest priority. What is your message to them?
Bring it on. As I said, if they think that they're going to come into Wyoming and make the argument that the people of Wyoming should vote for someone who is loyal to Donald Trump over somebody who's loyal to the Constitution, I welcome that debate, and I look forward to having that debate for the next 18 months.
Are you the leader of the opposition in exile right now in the Republican Party?
I intend to be the leader, one of the leaders, in a fight to help to restore our party, in a fight to bring our party back to substance and principles, and in a fight to make clear that we won't participate in a really dangerous effort that's underway. And I've worked in countries around the world that don't have peaceful transitions of power, countries that have autocracies, and it can happen very, very quickly. And so from my perspective, there's no question about what the top priority has to be, and that is defending the democracy.
A lot of people frame this as a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. But you're out of office. Trump is ascendant. Hasn't that battle been waged and won? Didn't Trump win it?
Actually, I'm in office and he's out of office.
Fair.
So
you're out of your leadership office.
That is true. No, look, this is the, I think, opening salvo in that battle. And it's a battle we have to win because it's not just about the Republican Party. It's about the country. And it's about whether or not we're going to respect our electoral process. And look, the other thing is, when you look at what our adversaries overseas are saying about us, when you look at what the Communist Chinese Party says about American democracy, they say it doesn't work. They say it's failed. So right now you have former President Trump basically perpetuating the lies that the Chinese Communist Party tells about us. And we have to stand against that. It hasn't failed. Our system, our institutions held. They must continue to hold. There is no greater system on earth than ours. And I'm going to continue to stand up for that.
What do you think about Republican efforts in various states to change voting laws, change voting procedures, all of which are predicated on the notion that there was fraud in the 2020 elections?
There are a number of changes that have been made, a number of laws that have been passed that have been misrepresented in the press. And I don't know anybody who says there was no fraud. I certainly don't say there was no
widespread fraud.
There was not the kind of fraud that the president claimed. They presented their evidence to court, and the notion of widespread fraud that would have justified flipping results just is not true. Did not happen. Now, I think if you look, for example, at what Florida did after 2000, that's what states should do. They should say, okay, what happened here? What went right? What went wrong? What do we need to do to fix it and adjust it? I think there has been misrepresentation about some of the efforts, for example, in Georgia, that have been made to begin to help to improve how elections are run. And I think it's an important issue that people have to focus on the details about it. I think that states should be making the changes. I think H.R. 1, which the Democrats have proposed, is very dangerous. I think that is an approach that federalizes our process, that limits people's political speech, that requires taxpayer money go to campaigns. That is absolutely the wrong approach. The states ought to be doing it as they are. Some of the legislation they pass we will agree with, some we won't. But I do think it's very important for the states to be making those decisions themselves.
But how far are you willing to push it? Because let's be honest, a lot of those efforts, those legislative efforts, those efforts to change the election rules are because of one thing and one thing only, because Trump has convinced Republicans that there was fraud in the election.
Look, I think what's more dangerous are the efforts to, claim that somehow we're now going to reverse the decision. The challenges that you've seen former President make about what's happening in Arizona, or he's made some claims recently about Michigan. Things that go to the heart of questioning whether or not the last election was legitimate. Those are the things that we have to stand against, and that I think are very dangerous.
Leader McCarthy wrote in his letter to your colleagues, "We are a big tent party, and unlike the left, we embrace free thought and debate." Do you agree? Right now, sitting here, having just lost your leadership position, do you think the Republican Party is welcoming free thought and debate?
Look, I think we have to. I think it's really important. I think we have to. I obviously do not agree with the direction that Leader McCarthy is taking the House conference, because I think that it emboldens and embraces what Donald Trump is doing. But I think we have to be a party that embraces debate and free thought. And that's why I think it's so important for us to rebuild the party. And that's what I'm going to be focused on.
Do you think Leader McCarthy has placed his own ambitions to be Speaker of the House above principle?
I think that he is not leading with principle right now. And I think that it's sad, and I think it's dangerous. And I think that, we are at a moment where the Republican Party has to lead. And the Republican Party has to have leaders that are focused on principle.
What did it mean when Kevin McCarthy, days after the January 6th riots and insurrection, went down to Mar-a-Lago and visited with President Trump?
I think there was a moment before that. There was a moment when we could have, as a party, said, listen, there had been impeachment proceedings in the House, the trial is happening in the Senate. There was a moment where we could have said, we're dealing with this, let's move forward. Let's focus on policy and substance. A number of us were saying that. And Leader McCarthy's visit to the former president at Mar-a-Lago was really stunning. Given what the former president did, he's not just a former president. He provoked an attack on the Capitol, an attack on our democracy. And so I can't understand why you would want to go rehabilitate him. There's no principled reason to do that.
And what's the political calculation? Under President Trump, you lost the White House, you lost the Senate. I continue to ask, what is the grip that President Trump has on the Republican Party?
Well, I think you'll have to ask others that question, because that's certainly the point that I've continued to make, and both constitutionally and politically, it doesn't make any sense.
Senator Joni Ernst took up for you, saying it was okay to express your thoughts as a member of Congress. She said then, cancel culture is cancel culture no matter how you look at it. Do you think the Republican Party is trying to cancel you?
Look, I view this differently. I think this is, not about whether you can speak or not speak. This is about, are you going to defend the Constitution and the democracy? And you're going to do it at a moment when it's difficult.
But when you do, you're out of leadership.
Well, but then it's up to me whether I let them silence me. And I'm certainly not going to do that. And I think it's really important for others. That's how our process is supposed to work. People speak out for what's right. And this is an issue that it shouldn't be partisan. It shouldn't be about politics. We have a duty to do this.
And what are you going to do differently? Politics is about persuasion. Right. All of this has taken place after there was a riot at the Capitol. The president, in many ways, has grown politically stronger since that moment. How do you make the case to the American people?
Well, I think a number of things. I think, all of us have to continue to speak out. I think that if you look at some of the polling, he actually hasn't grown stronger, and I think that's a good thing. But I think it's about being clear that this isn't a political debate. It's not a political fight. It's not the kind of battle we have every day, every hour sometimes here in Washington. This is about whether you're going to embrace the person who did this, and whether you're going to continue to facilitate the lies that he's continuing to tell. And to me, the answer is very clear. And I think the American people deserve to hear the truth. And people who have been betrayed and who believe what he's saying deserve to hear the truth. And I think the media has an obligation too. The media has got to focus on making sure that they aren't perpetuating the big lie. and making sure that people have access to information and have access to the truth and to the facts. And I think all of us have a role to play in doing that.
Do you think the media have been complicit in propagating?
I think some have. Some certainly have, yeah. And I think, it comes down to viewership, it comes down to ratings, but they also have to love our country more.
If belonging to the Republican Party requires you to believe that the election was fraudulent and that President Trump is the rightful winner, would you ever consider leaving the Republican Party and becoming an independent?
I'm not leaving the party. And there are millions and millions of Republicans out there who know that what the former president's doing is dangerous, and who know that the path back for our party is not by embracing him. And I intend to work with them to help to make sure we can rebuild our party away from the danger of the former president.
The president issued not one but two statements about you just this morning. In his last statement, he said you were a bitter, horrible human being. Care to respond?
I think he's proving my point.
Silence is golden. You said in your op-ed there's good reason to believe that the president's language could provoke violence again. Do you worry about your own safety?
What I was referring to there, actually, we've had multiple federal judges who've said that. If you look at some of the court cases involving those who've been arrested for January 6th, you'll see, a number of federal judges who have said that they are concerned. The president continues to use the same language, and people believed him. If you look at the testimony, there were people who were in the Capitol who said, "Well, we're here because the commander-in-chief told us. We have an obligation." That's the danger. I think a lot about the inscription above the fireplace in the White House. The John Adams, "May none but honest and wise men inhabit this house." And I think what we have seen over the course of the months since the election is how true that statement is, and how dangerous it is when you have somebody with that power who is not faithful to the Constitution and who puts themselves and their own desire for power above our republic. I think it's very dangerous.
You just said some of the participants in the riots were there because they felt the commander-in-chief told them to be there. Do you think the president should or could be criminally charged?
I think that is something the Department of Justice will decide. I think it's very important that the investigation that the Department of Justice has underway be allowed to go wherever it leads. And nobody, no Republican, no Democrat, nobody in Congress, nobody in the White House should stop that. And I think that's really critical because I think the American people have to know, and certainly any president who did what we know this former president did has got to be investigated criminally.
Would it be warranted, in your mind, a criminal charge against the president?
Look, I think the Department of Justice is going to decide that. I think, I voted for impeachment, so certainly what he did was impeachable, both in terms of provoking the attack and also in terms of refusing to send help when the attack was underway. And I think that, as I said, it's really important. The White House should not stop the Department of Justice from pursuing this investigation wherever it may lead.
The president is currently banned from social media platforms. Given his rhetoric, his continued rhetoric, do you think the social media platforms should continue to ban him from being on them?
Look, I think that each of the different platforms has their own rules. One of my former law professors, Judge McConnell, was on the Facebook panel that reviewed whether he should continue to be banned from Facebook. I think that the recommendation they made makes sense. They continued the ban for 6 months, but they said Facebook has got to have some rules. And you can't sort of indefinitely ban political figures without having a very clear structure to do that. But I think there is real danger that this former president's statements could incite violence. And that's not a place we've ever been before. And I do think there's an obligation and a responsibility for people to recognize that and to prevent it.
So do you support the bans so far?
Look, I think each of the platforms is going to make its own decision about that. But I think bans based on a concern about the provocation of violence, those are things that are very different from chilling political speech. That crosses a line into a different category.
You are a political leader in your own right. But it is interesting that here you are, the top female in leadership in the House. Do you see sexism in anything that has gone on here?
Look, I am. I'm very hesitant to, talk about it in that way. I think that as women, all of us have an obligation to usually fight harder and work harder and be better. But I don't think that anybody should ever play the victim. And, I think that, when I think about my own daughters, when I think about the example of my mother, I was really blessed to grow up in a house where it just never occurred to us, my sister and me, that our gender was any sort of an obstacle to anything. We were raised to understand that you could be anything you wanted to be if you worked hard enough to do that. And I think that it's important as women for us to compete based on substance and on policy and on being better. And that's what I intend to keep doing.
So one woman against the Republican Party and Donald Trump, how does that strike you?
Look, I'm doing what I think is necessary for the good of the country and for the good of the party. And I'm going to continue to do that. And
finally, your father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, is a veteran of a few political battles himself. Did he give you any advice? What does he think about the stand that you're taking?
Oh, I talk to him every day, usually. I'm just immensely proud to be his daughter. I learned from him the importance of having the courage of your convictions. I learned from him what it means to stand up for what's right, regardless of the slings and arrows that might come. But I also learned from him a love of history, and from my mother. And I look at this moment right now as much more about duty than about courage. People say, well, this is courageous. I'm not landing on Omaha Beach. That's courage. This is duty. This is what our oath requires and what history requires. And I'm just incredibly proud to be Dick Cheney's daughter.
Do you think he's proud to be your father on this day?
I know he is.
And your kids? You've got 5 children. Did they give you any advice? Are they aware of what's going on?
Oh, yes, they are aware, and that it's very meaningful. My boys, we were having dinner at one point after January 13th, after the impeachment vote, and there was a moment when I looked across the table at them, and it occurred to me that we grew up in a country where you didn't have to take the peaceful transfer of power. Well, you could take it for granted. You knew that we would have peaceful transfers of power. And I looked at the two of them and I thought, my gosh, maybe this is going to be a country where they can't just assume that will happen. And that can't be. We have to stand up against that. And my daughters, that's been one of the most moving things. All 3 of my daughters, texted and called to say that they loved me and that they were proud, and we had the chance to have a mother-daughter pre-Mother's Day weekend at home last week, which was very special.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.